let me get sector specific. Vikas Khanna, I'm getting sector specific, so let me begin with you. What is your own assessment? I mean, Indian cuisine is, of course, globally now very acceptable. So we're talking about a whole lot of sectors where we need to and can catch up, which includes, of course, health, education, even something as the food industry. What are your own learnings in terms of what do we need to get to that number 4? Let's just focus on getting to number 4.
I think the services also include, when we talk about Indian chefs, let's talk about hospitality. We're looking at cruises, we're looking at restaurants, I'm not talking specified Indian, cooking Indian food. Most of us who graduated from colleges, we learned how to cook European or basically European cuisine. But, that also trained a very major part of our chunk of chefs who are specialized in Western cuisines. So when you're traveling abroad on big hotels or cruises, everything, you'll always find Indian chefs in the kitchen, which is amazing because it's like people like us who had issues with the Western food that they only focused on Indian cuisine. But there are very few of, like us, who just focused and stayed true to just Indian regional cuisine. It was different that I got an opportunity in New York when I had to only talk about Indian food. But I would meet chefs in thousands and thousands numbers who were working in international chains as services, or the country is actually training them and sending them abroad. Indian hospitality is legendary, not because of the nature of the country or the DNA of Indians, but it is also very significant because services don't end in just restaurants and hotels. You're talking about hospitals, you're talking about cinemas, you're talking about entertainment. There's an extreme level of the availability of Indians in that service sector of hospitality. But somehow it's people, chefs like us who do Indian food, we get recognized because of, a continuity. Like you would not go to a chef, Indian chef in America who's specializing in Italian cuisine. You'll always go to an Italian chefs who will be specializing in Italian cuisine. Somehow America set up like that. They want to have that whole journey of the chef with the food. But besides those few numbers, Indian hospitality has actually been very significant on international platform of all the top restaurants or chefs or shows or writers or editors or food shows and television. Indians have been very, very instrumental in that international benchmark.
I would agree with that. And I'm glad that you spoke about those unsung heroes. I mean, they're not just Indian chefs and celebrity chefs. There are thousands of them who are manning kitchens of some of the other very, very well-known restaurants, and of course the entire hospitality aspect of it as well. I think we take the cake there. We should give ourselves a big round of applause in terms of how well our hospitality industry is done and how well it's done to put us on the global map. Okay, there's an Indian feeling very proud. Let me talk to Trevor Bull now. Trevor, we're talking about financial services, and here's my question to you. You're working in India, you're working in our financial capital, Mumbai, but then when I go to Dubai and I go to a London or I go to a Singapore, Hong Kong, I still feel we could do better. And we could probably perform better in terms of becoming one of the top financial capitals of the world. Would you agree? And what's stopping us?
Yeah, big question. Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I certainly would agree. So let's just put it in perspective and make sure we do understand India's doing pretty well already first. We always talk about IT services and the Wipros and the TCS and their superb global companies. But if you exclude IT and the service sector itself, we just looked at financial services, real estate, and professional services. Those three aspects, subsector, already do 20% of the GDP of India today, all right? So services, sometimes people think IT only for India. It's not. We're really strong. However, in the financial services of insurance industry, which I also know, we are failing pretty miserably. Failing not in the sense that we're not growing. The life insurance industry, private life industry grew at 15%, just over, which is pretty decent, pretty rare. But the penetration of insurance in India is the lowest in Asia. The margins that insurers earn on products in India are the lowest in Asia. It's a bit of a coincidence, lowest margins earned, but the lowest penetration. Is there something common there? I don't know. The reality is, I think there is a constraint still, a concern that foreign investment into the insurance industry is still not fully welcomed. The defense industry, a foreign company can own 100% entity here in India, despite that being the protection of the realm and the citizens of India. Insurance is more scary, only 49% allowed. And at 49%, you're allowed less control than when we used to have 26% as foreign companies. Yeah? There is some strange constraints which is holding things back to get the penetration. There is caps on expenses. So a shareholder wants to spend money, his money, not policyholder. He's not allowed to. He's constrained by the regulations. So there is just a number of inhibitors today which is preventing the insurance industry really doing the job it should do. Because insurance industries around the world build countries. Insurance companies buy more government bonds than any other industry, including my colleague on my left, banking. We do a lot more, as you know. We're one of the biggest investors in the stock market. So we build companies. We build roads. We build schools. We build infrastructure. Insurance needs to go. What I love about India, and I think what will blow all this away, all these constraints, is India is, yes, we're young, we've heard that, but young, ambitious, full of ideas, digitally fearless, borderline digitally reckless. That all these barriers in the new world of digital, and India will lead, in my view, will absolutely blow away all the old models of the Western world, all the old models of other parts, and then despite some of the constraints today, India will take over in insurance, and they will find new models and show the world how to do it properly.
I'm wondering whether this is going to turn into a low penetration of India's insurance sector. But well, that's for another day. I have very strong opinions on why we've not been able to get the penetration higher. But this is not the time to be talking about it. Yes, we are a severely underinsured country, and we could bring in so much employment just by deepening the insurance cover of Indians. Okay, let me now bring in education. A topic close to my heart because I have a 16-year-old and I'm wondering what to do. I mean, do I send him abroad? Do I keep him in India? What am I going to do? What do we do with our young? Do we have more universities and colleges and upgrade our own education and bring in maybe create more opportunities for international students to come to India? Or do we keep giving US, UK, Australia a lot of money trying to educate our children? Anthony Little, what do you think?
It is a fundamental question. I'm glad you pointed that out. Incidentally, I noticed at the very beginning of this conference that education ranked 12th and last of the list of services. It should be the other way around. Education should be very much at the beginning. It underpins everything we seek to do. Incidentally, being an educator in a country full of young people is wonderful. The opportunities are just enormous. I bring a slightly different take to this. GEMS Education is the largest, what the Americans call K-12 company in the world, running schools from age 3 to age 18. It's 230,000 children, 17 countries, including India. It employs, it's the largest employer of Indian teachers outside India, as well, incidentally, as British teachers outside the UK and Americans outside the US. So it's a genuinely international company, and that gives a very interesting and particular take on what is happening in India. And just in succinct summary, I would say this. One of the very best schools in the world I've seen is an Indian curriculum, Indian school in Dubai. Sensational school, very well run, with a stress on creativity and integrity, which if you look at the surveys around the world of what employers think are the most necessary attributes of school leavers, Indian schools can get it right. The vast majority don't. As things stand, I think there are 3 issues that India has to grapple with its school-level education system. One is what it's actually teaching, another is teacher training, and the third is mindset. What is it that we want our young people to be? And it doesn't seem to me there is yet the clarity coming through the Indian school education system which is going to propel it to being an international service of choice. And it should be there, and it could be there.
Let me conclude with a concluding comment from the optimist in our group, Mr. Dawar. Though I must say everyone's very optimistic. I mean, what is not to be optimistic about India right now, isn't it?
Well, that I really would have to think and maybe give you an answer tomorrow morning, if I can find anything, being the eternal optimist that I am. Yes, there are certain issues. Ease of doing business, we need to improve tremendously on that. We need to get everybody on board as far as business is concerned. Even if I may say so, especially the bureaucracy at the lower levels. We've got to get them to accept that the old ways of doing business is no longer acceptable. There should not be roadblocks. There should not be unnecessary investigations into, and the entrepreneur must be left to do his work and to the best of his ability. This I can see in my own business. It's still happening, and it's extremely frustrating, to have to deal with this, apart from, so whatever it is. Nobody wants to deal with government at any level, but this is happening. And I think that is also what I did mention in my last session with the Chief Minister, that they have a right to services enactment. They've enacted it, services of the government. So you have every right to avail of property registration if you need to, all sorts of licensing, whatever. Let me give you a simple example. We are in publishing. We have a very antiquated organization called Registrar of Newspapers India. And even today, I have to go to the Esplanade Court and make declarations out there. Now, this is a complete, this is the pre-independence hangover which we have, because in those days, the British insisted that, you have to. I could go on that, but yes, that certainly dampens my optimism and my enthusiasm, but not to the extent that I would give up. So anyway,
all right.
Thank you very much.
Very strong point highlighted there, ease of doing business. Well, there is consensus at the top that the government wants to make it happen, but then India is a federal structure. We have several layers of governance, and I think by the time you reach the city and the local level, things pretty much went down in terms of intent. And probably digitization could be the solution, because the more digital you can make everything, the more transparent everything becomes. And that's why we also are looking at that digital revolution. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Zara, thank you very much for joining me.